oh, we should go to this networking event or we need to do this startup meetup. It's like, no, you don't. What you need to do is talk to your potential customer, figure out, how to solve it, be as close to the customer as possible. If I'm the owner of a business and I'm looking at my numbers and I've performed $200,000, worth of dental work in the last year that I haven't been paid on, um, that's a problem. And so we realized that a big reason for that wasn't because patients were truly trying to skip out on their bill. It was that the way that they were being presented their bill, the way they were being notified, the requests were just painful. You get a letter in the mail. People move a lot. I don't really read my mail that carefully, right?
Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ship It and Sip It. My name is John and I'm here with Jeff Cole, who's the CEO at Pearly.co. He's a serial founder and entrepreneur, and he's been partnered with Paralect since around 2015. So we've got a lot to cover, but we won't go into detail on the whole history. I want to talk about Pearly and the first company he had together with us and what he's learned along that journey. So how you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. I guess let's talk about Pearly. Can you give us the sort of elevator pitch and also where did the inspiration come from for the idea?
Yeah, sure. So, Pearly, we make dental revenue cycle management software, which sounds like quite the mouthful, but effectively, with healthcare in the US and specifically in the dental industry, the billing and the financial experience for patients, but then also the, administrative tedious tasks of figuring out insurance and patient payments is really painful for both, patients as well as practices. So what we do is, our software platform, we primarily work with groups and DSOs, which are basically multi-location dental practices. Um, and we really help them kind of do three main things, leverage our software to run sort of that end-to-end revenue cycle, really helping them, collect more money faster, which improves cash flow, saving their team and their staff a lot of time, and then ultimately, making the patient experience much more modern. And you'd asked about inspiration. Really, my co-founder and I, we had a previous company in the healthcare space, and our sort of passion is how can we make, healthcare better, and especially on some of the operational and business side, it can feel a little bit outdated compared to, many other industries. And so, got a dental bill, didn't understand it. It was a huge pain. I had to mail in a check. It just felt like, we're not living in the 1980s. You can go online and pretty much buy anything. So we really set out to, and seeing that a lot of dental practices had been investing in terms of more kind of patient engagement. So being able to book online, getting a text message appointment reminder. But when it came to the financial side of things, that's really where it still felt stuck and outdated. It was a lot of paper statements, a lot of clunky online payment portals. So we really looked and started digging in and saying, okay, how can we, not only help our practice customers, save time and have, better collection and financial metrics, but also make the patient feel like they are going to, a modern, up-to-date practice and, paying for dental care or finding a, flexible pay over time plan is as seamless as, buying something online. There's, for example, sometimes paying your $100 dental bill can take you a really long time in terms of finding a check. And, as a result, the bill sits on your counter. You're happy to pay it, but you don't because you ran out of stamps and you don't know where your checks are. And from, that perspective, that obviously impacts the dental practices not being able to collect. And then on the patient side, it should be as easy for me to, receive a text message, be able to understand what and why I owe for my dental care, and be able to, click and pay with Apple Pay. So kind of a long-winded answer, but really what our focus on is, how can we make the dental billing and payments process better and more modern, while ultimately improving the patient experience. But, from our kind of direct customers who are the dental practice, streamlining their operations, making them more efficient.
We talk a lot about product validation in the early stages. So, for you guys at Pearly, what were some of the factors that indicated that this product was in demand? Were you doing a lot of talks with dental practices? What did that process look like?
Yeah, we fortunately have some great advisors, Fred Joyle and Gary St. Dennis, who've been in the dental industry for, decades. They founded 1-800 Dentist. And, so we knew that there are challenges. We started by speaking with actually several dental practices, but also several dental consultants. So there's a few large consulting groups in the industry where think about them as they'll come and help with the business side. So, a dental consultant maybe works with a handful of dental offices, help them with metrics and management, understanding it. And through working with one of these dental consultants, we actually built our sort of first version, was just for them to offer their customers. And through that process, we sort of uncovered some of these problem areas, and specifically on the revenue side. And what we really figured out, I think like any entrepreneur trying to build, business, there's so much you want to do, right? We said, wow, we know the full end-to-end revenue cycle management, you know, through some innovation and, software, and importantly for us, integrating with their practice management system in a really deep and novel way. We really think we can, solve and automate a lot of this end to end. But when you're starting out, you don't have the resources to do it. So we said, hey, let's really dig into a couple of the pain points that we think we could solve. And so what we were, hearing about a lot, and kind of, our first couple features and products were first, in-house membership. So a large percentage of the U.S. does not have dental insurance. I think it's like 25 or 30%. And dental practices were struggling with patients coming in. So we introduced our membership product. So if you're a dental practice, someone does not have insurance, you could come in and say, hey, for $300 a year, for $25 a month, you can have a direct membership relationship with us to get your 2 cleanings. But a lot of these membership programs have been around for, decades now. We found they're managed a lot on Excel spreadsheets, trying to remember renewal dates, sort of your typical kind of, file paper cabinet. So that was our first product that we launched. And then, after we started working with dental practices, they said, this is so great. One big benefit of the membership program is, for cleanings and kind of more, routine preventative care, I don't need to deal with the AR, the accounts receivable, meaning the money that the patient owes after they've already left the office. So we started digging in there, and we'd heard this was an issue, but we didn't honestly realize it was such an acute pain point in terms of having past due patient balances and how do you collect them once they left the office. And that's primarily driven for insurance. So then we started getting into what I call post-visit billing. So you come into the office, maybe there's a copay amount, it's challenging to estimate insurance. Fast forward, the insurance claim comes back, 60 to 90 days later in some cases, and you owe $27. And you get a paper statement and you're like, well, I already paid in the office, insurance is confusing. Do I actually owe this? And, fast forward from an individual office seeing, let's say, 14 patients a day, times a large group that has 50 offices, suddenly you run into a situation where you are carrying, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in past due accounts receivable. And that's really sort of was the key for us, where we realized, with these larger groups, that's really kind of where the light bulb went on, where the dental industry is consolidating. There's more and more, multi-location ownerships. And that's where we were seeing some big gaps, where you could have 2 identical offices, A and B, both with similar patient bases, both with similar production, and yet their collection metrics were wildly different. Well, why is that? Well, it's mainly staff driven. It's hard to hire and run great people. So Office A maybe, has a 98% collection rate and is doing great. Well, that's because, Nancy at the front desk, or as the office manager, has a really great process. But at Office B, maybe there was some turnover with, the office manager, the financial coordinator, and Bob comes in and he has a million things on his plate, and chasing down past due balances isn't a priority. fast forward 6 months, you have a really big problem. You are not collecting on money for work that you've already performed. So that was kind of I think our sort of I'd say like interest or factor was that there's a lot of different components of the dental revenue cycle. We found specifically that on the AR collection side, that was a really acute pain point. While membership and some of the other features we have, are very additive to the business, but with startups you hear about making a painkiller, not a vitamin. And when you're sitting there, and if not even on the group side, but let's say on the individual practice side, if I'm the owner of a business and I'm looking at my numbers and I've performed $200,000, worth of dental work in the last year that I haven't been paid on, um, that's a problem. And so we realized that a big reason for that wasn't because patients were truly trying to skip out on their bill. It was that the way that they were being presented their bill, the way they were being notified, the requests were just painful. You get a letter in the mail. People move a lot. I don't really read my mail that carefully, right? And and then I see, okay, fine, I owe, $52 or whatever it is. It sits on my counter. I'm happy to pay it. What I was saying earlier, you mail in a check, the way in which you pay really matters. So we had the insight of, if we could dig into the ledger details of the practice management system, put some workflow automations, and really a bit of that 80/20 rule where the office staff should be really focused on speaking with patients through difficult billing or insurance challenges, right? Or answering questions, not just like making call after call, not, just mailing statement after statement. So we really, kind of built our system on how can we automate this? And there's sort of a lot under the hood and able to do that successfully. And we sort of had that first indication of seeing, how much we're able to collect, while also how much time we're able to save from our early customers. And then that just really continued to magnify as we worked with more and more dental offices. We realized that, this was a pretty big problem, for a large percentage of the dental world. And, really starting from early on where, hey, we just sent out, our first 5 digital statements and, two of them got paid within 5 minutes. That was like, wow. And now, we send out 200 plus thousand a month. But those same trends have really held true. And that sort of gave us the spark of, we knew that, um, there's a lot of ways we could improve the revenue cycle. But I think more importantly, being able to go in and solve that very specific problem and expand from there really became our strategy.
Yeah, that's a great start. And from everything I've heard about the product from the team here, you guys are making leaps and bounds and a lot of progress already. And that whole story, just I've been living outside the U.S. for the last 7 years or so, so I forgot what a mess, honestly. The billing cycle is in the medical and dental industries there. But I'm glad that smart people like you are working on better solutions for it. Let's dive into your background a little bit. The first product that you guys built with Paralect was called Path. We have a case study on Paralect's website. You can go check that out if you want to hear the full story. But just from you, can you share some highlights from that experience? And was it your first startup?
Yeah, my first startup. So, I was 25 probably. And Sean Emmer and I, Sean's my co-founder and CTO, who works, sort of the most closely with Paralect, was also in the healthcare field. We started off realizing, how could we, at the time, skilled nursing chains in home care, more in the senior living space, was, parents looking to, move or adult children looking to move in their parent. There was a lot of discussion. A lot of it happened over phone calls. These larger, skilled nursing, groups were looking to how can we streamline some of that, customer communication in a HIPAA compliant manner. And, HIPAA is the, regulatory guidelines in the US. So we, said, hey, how can we, leverage kind of your traditional live chat, leverage in some, AI and chat, that's obviously come very far since then. Very basic back when we did it, but even in terms of being able to screen and qualify potential patients or potential caregivers. Also on hiring caregivers, we automated some of the job questionnaires, and then through that we actually ended up having some white label partners, so sort of other industry partners who, sold into other types of verticals that would, sort of leverage our software on the back end, put their name on it. And then through that, growing that up. What was different versus Pearly is we were sort of, we had sort of one product, worked really well, sold it in, we were helping, improve that communication, and then ended up getting approached by kind of a large customer experience software company based out of Arizona. Thought they were going to be a partner. Turned out they were, looking for an acquisition. We decided, that sort of made sense. At the time, kind of good first win going from thinking of, the idea to bring it up through acquisition, and that was kind of the what we ended up doing.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously how popular AI based chats are, products based on AI. Do you ever wish you kind of stuck in that niche? Was there any regret there?
No, I'd say I wouldn't say that the regret comes from AI. What we did, I think, for our first company is we had a really great product, but where, myself and my co-founder Sean were very much more, product people. We were not as strong on, building out a sales team, bringing in the marketing. And as soon as our company was acquired, the acquirer was really good at that, and they were able to, significantly increase our product sales. That's like, oh, we should have done more, sales and that type of thing. I think now it's like a really, obviously most interesting time probably in history regarding AI. But we would have, we sold our company back in 2018, so we would have been waiting around a while until that came out. But so I'd say more, first company, learned a lot, did a lot of things well, did a lot of things poorly. But yeah, kind of specifically on the AI chat product, probably that would have we would have spun our wheels for too long. But now I think it's really cool to kind of feel like we had sort of identified that as an area that should be better, and now there's obviously way better technology around it than frankly we had even really envisioned at the time.
Right on. And so, can you expand a little bit on some of the challenges you faced with the first product path, and maybe what what did you learn from those that made Pearly a bit easier going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first time entrepreneurs, you read different things, or you have an idea of what a startup's going to be like, and probably focus on too many things. I think focus is really the big thing. It's hard to build a company, invent a new product, distribute that product. So what we really did was, I think, with Path, trying to almost do too many different things that didn't really matter at that stage. So, oh, we should go to this networking event, or we need to do this startup meetup. It's like, no, you don't. What you need to do is talk to your potential customer, figure out, how to solve it, be as close to the customer as possible. And really, I think that's the biggest thing, is thinking, oh, we need to have, in our early office, this is how startup offices look like. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. So certainly for Pearly this time around, we were, I'd say, much more focused on the things that move the needle at a given stage. And those areas obviously change. Now we've grown the team with Pearly, we do more, you know, company culture and events and that stuff. But when it's, two people sitting on a desk next to each other inventing something, it's like all we should be doing is talking to our customers, iterating on the product, listening to the feedback. I'd say we've also gotten more, metrics driven, and being very thoughtful about, what those specific KPIs are, not just from the business, but also from demonstrating product value. So, if we are working with, let's say, 5 early customers, how do we know if the product is being successful? So really, working closely with those early customers up front to kind of predefine what success looks like, and then being able to through like a pilot say, okay, you know for Pearly, for example, we've talked about, what you're struggling with is some, 90 plus do AR, or, your team is spending a large percentage of the time on outreach. Okay, so we're going to look at like how much of this outreach can we automate? How much time are you spending doing this? And putting a number on it. And on the collection side, okay, let's look at what, your status quo is. Now let's implement Pearly, let our, software run, make the tweaks and adjustments, and then be able to revisit that and really prove out that value case. So I'd say probably the two biggest things are, just focus, say no to a lot more stuff early on, as well as, really trying to, what we worked on was really trying to define, what success of the product looks like that can be, measurable, and understand, why are two customers potentially having different experiences. Is it a product issue? Is it an onboarding issue? Is it a ease of use issue? And then just doing that again and again and again and again, and then the product kind of becomes better a lot faster.
Very cool. And given that you did have a successful exit with Path, what drove you back to start up building? Was it a pretty immediate feeling that you wanted to start something again? Was it the hatred of the idea of working for someone else?
Yeah,
What was your motivation there?
so after our company was acquired, we joined the company, bought us. It was, obviously a much larger, more mature company, and so I learned a lot. Honestly, the first year or so was great. A lot of new learnings, moving into a more corporate environment where I'm not, thinking of ideas or talking to customers as much, but presenting board slides or doing like high level strategy. I ended up becoming the VP of product there, and it was really great. Worked with some awesome people, and I think after about a year, I was like, okay, like I like that, or I like the kind of the 0 to 1 phase, if you will. And frankly, too, I think a big driver of it was, I did have so many, learnings from the first company where it is a skill set where I said, oh man, yeah, I just found myself saying like, if I do another company, I'm going to do XYZ different, and so, that's really, I think for me, just personally, I just love building things. When I'm not building, Pearly during the week, on the weekend, I do home improvement projects or build outdoor furniture. Like I just enjoy building. And obviously, you can do that in a more corporate environment, but I think that I always knew, love starting it. So when we, left the company, Sean and I both took time off. We kind of did, a sabbatical, traveled around. It was lovely. We actually, my wife and I got back, from Australia, like I think 2 or 3 weeks before COVID lockdown. And then, and through that time, we just realized we wanted to do it again. For me too, having, Sean, who, the first time around, we, worked well together. We said, hey, let's do this again. We're a little smarter and wiser at this time, and so that really drove it. I'd say kind of combination of enjoying building and feeling like I, would be sort of smarter and more efficient second time around.
Yeah, right. And I did have a follow up question now that you've mentioned Sean a couple times, and this is your second startup with him. People talk a lot about drama or tension between co-founders. Do you guys have any sort of like, what do you think makes it work between you two?
I think a lot of it is time and just comfortable. So Sean and I were actually freshman year roommates at Princeton. So we've known each other since we were, 18. And we were, friends throughout college, not, best friends. And then, I knew he was, great engineer and working in San Francisco at the time. So I kind of said, hey, you want to come down to Santa Barbara for a weekend and listen to this crazy idea I have? And he said, sure, let's do it. I think a big thing is communication. It's like a marriage or any significant other. You need to learn how to work through conflict. So first time around, Sean and I, we'd scream at each other, we'd be hard on each other, we'd get pissed off at each other, and then I think over time you just realize we both share the same values, both share the same goals. It's mostly communication issues, right? Especially um, just early on when you're making decisions, it's not just, hey, Sean, build this feature. It's, hey, we talked to this customer. This is how I'm thinking about it. What do you think? Yep, this makes sense to, reprioritize part of our roadmap, for example. So I think a big part of it is just, the more you can communicate, the better, but also just being very clear on, we sort of started saying this phrase that is now, one of our company values, the term desired outcome. So we try to, have each, meeting or conversation of saying, okay, what's the desired outcome? Now let's talk about how to get there, because sometimes it's so easy when there's a million different things going on to get lost. I mean, this is a dumb example, but if you say, hey, you want to like, I think we should change, XYZ of this feature. Well, he could be thinking about it and giving ideas because he thinks it should be to improve the UX, for example, right? And I'm coming at it because we had our largest customer made, a special feature request. And so he's looking at me like, well, what you're telling me is not maybe the best UX, but I'm doing it as a customer, response. So being very clear on, okay, why are we going to make this change? The desired outcome is because, this large customer needs it to change XYZ so they can, accomplish some internal goal. Then it's like, great, we're all aligned on that. Now let's figure out how to achieve that. So having that sort of desired outcome focus has been really helpful in terms of just defining the communication. And we found that as soon as we started doing that, we work really well together solving it. But it's how do you work together if you're both, trying to go to two different destinations? So sort of over communicating that piece. And we do that now in all areas of the company. If it's a new marketing campaign, not even, if I'm working some with Sean, it's like, okay, well, what's the desired outcome here? Is it to get, brand new leads, or is it for, brand awareness or and being very specific about, what we're trying to achieve. And that makes, the communication way easier. But a lot of it's just time working together. Sean and I are much better business partners now than we were a year ago, and especially 5 years ago, because you figure out each other's preferences and nuances. It's like any, I think any good or bad, romantic relationship, right? Hopefully over time you get better and better and you don't fight as much and you learn, how to deal with each other. And if it's a bad relationship, that probably increases. So I think it's being very intentional about that.
Awesome. Well, that's a great insight into the journey you guys have been on so far. But you did mention you got back and you started Pearly in February 2020, which was a very strange time in our recent history due to the pandemic. So, how did that sort of impact the beginnings of the product itself?
Fortunately, it was, we were, I'd say, lucky in terms of the timing where, obviously the most of the dental industry was, closed down, but we were in writing the first line of code, figuring out what we wanted to build. So it actually kind of gave us the opportunity to just like put our head down at our houses and build for a very long time. And then, when we were kind of starting to work with our first initial customers and, COVID had, it had begun opening up a bit more. So for us, I think it, um, we were fortunate in, I mean, just, obviously dumb luck in terms of the timing, where if we had, maybe started a year earlier and we're sort of in growth initial customer mode, and then we were, dealing with all the challenges of COVID, that would have been hard. But, during sort of the peak, largest lockdown stages of COVID, we didn't have any customers. So we were just building the MVP.
All right. And I guess it would be helpful to have a little timeline here. So, how long did it take from sort of you both decided to start working on the idea to getting the first version of the product out?
So as I kind of mentioned earlier, it was a little different because we were working kind of on a more specific, almost like kind of custom software build type project for a dental consultant. Um, so I'd say that probably, kind of that that summer after we had completed that, sort of, June, July 2020 was probably when we started having our first couple customers get on, but it was pretty slow because we were still working on, this side project. And then, really sort of, I'd say kind of through the end of 2020, spring of 2021 was really when we started ramping a little bit more. And then, only about a year ago, a year and a half ago, we started, probably almost 2 years ago, we started working with some larger dental groups and things like that. So it was a little different where we didn't sort of, kind of go about it saying, oh, we're going to build this to bring to market. We kind of had almost like this consulting side project to kind of get us into the industry. And then we said, okay, now that that's completed, let's, kind of move on our own way.
Very cool. And I guess after the successful exit with Path, what made you confident that the Paralect team was the right technical partner for Pearly as well?
Yeah, I mean, really just the people you guys are able to recruit. I think that's really what it comes down to. We're, I don't know, maybe a little different than some of your other clients, but because we have, Sean, and he actually did for this time around, he, did sort of the full MVP himself before we had engaged Paralect this time around. But we, sort of knew that, we had an amazing experience working with Paralect at, Path, and when we were sort of ready to start scaling it, we knew that the Paralect would be a great partner. So we did look at, a few different other options, people locally, that kind of thing. But, we, reached out to Paralect again and said, hey, do you have any good candidates? We were fortunately able to, interview and find some really great folks. I think we have 4 engineers from Paralect right now on our team. And, really just, I think, high quality engineers who can jump in, very early. And we really try to treat them, as part of the team, like have them, have everyone on quarterly meetings. And Sean has done an amazing job, working with the Paralect folks and managing them in terms of, not all, we really don't treat it like, here's a spec, do it, right? It's, hey, here's a spec, let's collaborate on the best way to do it. We want, our team members, and especially Sean wants, the engineers to be telling him, hey, the way that, you wrote the spec out is maybe not as efficient as it could be. And so, just long-term relationship, I think there's, so many different, options and engineering type, outsource firms. But we had obviously, worked with Paralect for a long time, and ended up continuing to work with them, after the company was acquired. So, I think it really just comes down to you guys are able to find great, smart people. And, we sort of know there's a level of, especially early on when, we don't want to spend, when it's only a couple person company, we can't go and spend, 2 months just recruiting and interviewing because, we're trying to build an initial company. So, we found that, when Paralect would bring us, candidates, they were, already generally high quality. And then it was just kind of finding the right fit.
All right, so let's get into the go-to-market strategy a little bit while we still have some time. You mentioned that you were kind of doing a custom solution for one dental outfit, but what were some other highlights from your go-to-market with Pearly?
Yeah. So, we try a bunch of different stuff. I think early on, we were reaching and out having, you know, taking dentists to lunch, talking to, offices, doing pretty, more kind of non-scalable type things. And that really helped getting a few of our early customers. And then, really just, for our first customer was a dental office down in San Diego. I went down there, did in-office training, all of that type of stuff. And, then really leveraging the success of the product to say, hey, do you know any other, um, you know, do you have any other dental folks? Or through some of our consultants, they said, hey, it works with one of your clients. Maybe you should think about another client. So that was definitely a big part of it. And I'd say, what we really focused on is, for our early customers, we really want to deliver such a great experience and get a case study. And actually have a case study. So then for the next, customer, it gets easier. So we were mainly, primarily working with, individual dental offices, and The real sort of switch is when, we worked with our first DSO, which, think about it like a multi-location dental group. There's various ways they're structured. And we really thought, well, these larger groups, they probably have more of the revenue cycle figured out and dialed in. And in some cases, the answer to that's yes, but in other cases, no, because they're scaling and they're growing. There's different practice management softwares. So after working with our first, this was a small one. It was like a 6 location dental group. We were, there we were able to have a lot of success. So we sort of changed our strategy a bit. Instead of focusing on individual, private practices, really working with more groups. And we were able to get a few sort of industry leading groups on early on, and that sort of then helped fuel the VP of revenue cycle management have heard about us, or they changed companies and wanted to bring Pearly in. So that's sort of in the past year or so, that's really been an important flywheel kind of driving it, where we were able to get referenceable names, we were able to show real success, show real results, and kind of getting, I think the hardest part of a new company is, especially for us, when you're dealing with patient billing, you're dealing with very sensitive data, you're dealing with very sensitive operations, you're dealing with, in my opinion, one of the more important pieces of a business, you're dealing with the money. So, being able to, get over the hump of demonstrating value and having referenceable customers and having that real trust into the product, that was a big thing for us. In terms of kind of specifically reaching out, I'd say kind of your typical B2B playbook of, some digital marketing, content marketing, direct cold outreach in terms of email, sales, mail. But really, I'd say the kind of the big hurdle is when you can be talking to another similar customer and say, well, let me, instead of let me tell you every feature, let me walk you through how we solved this, problem the exact problem you have for another customer who looks just like you, who you recognize in the space. That's really, I think, the biggest, kind of the biggest shift.
Very cool. And so let's jump a little bit into fundraising now. The fundraising environment for startups isn't great. It's definitely not what it was a couple of years ago. So, do you have any advice for founders who are raising now in regards to pitching or finding a good investor and startup fit?
Yeah, I've been through, a few different cycles in terms of is it easy or, hard. I think the whatever kind of 2021 period was just like totally not reality. And so I think that really it kind of comes back to, even in Path and my first company, how we used to pitch when it wasn't, just this any kind of random app idea got, $10 million. Really comes down to being very clear on your market, on your go-to-market strategy, and then ultimately like having, a decently clear view of how you're going to get to that next milestone. So I'd say, if you're raising a pre-seed or a seed round, so much of it's the team, and so being able to say, hey, we've built another company, we've worked together, that obviously makes it way easier. But even for Path, our first one, it's, hey, we've known each other for a long time, we've worked together. I think making as much traction as you can early on. For Pearly, we did end up raising money, but for the first year, Sean and I just bootstrapped it, and I think that gives you a very different mindset and being more efficient with capital. So I think it obviously depends on, what market and what stage you're at trying to raise money, but, being able to have a kind of concise and compelling story about, what the problem is, that's really what I've always focused on is this problem acute or significant enough, because it's hard to get people to change, anything. um, and so, if it's, hey, here's this thing that's going to marginally help you, that's going to be much more difficult. I found that when you dig into, the more challenging problems, oftentimes, your MVP works better, because even though it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, you're at least solving a problem that really matters and the bar is a little lower, versus if you're trying to be, the sexiest new consumer app, like that's really hard because people aren't going to change behaviors, oftentimes for something that's like, you know, only a couple percent better, right? So I'd say that, think about the problem and the team that you're solving. And like, as you get into the industry, your product, your market, may shift, pivot, change a lot. But if you can really focus on that problem and then dig into it. So, for us with Pearly, we really looked and we said, you know, the revenue cycle piece of the dental industry, that the financial experience side, we think that is pretty broken and pretty and too complex and pretty hairy. Now, because it is a big problem, there's a lot of things that we're able to have on our roadmap that we haven't done yet, but we're able to say, okay, well, let's dive into then like a very solvable piece. So for us specifically, how can we help the AR collection issue? And then by really diving into that, and then we get in there with the customer, then we're able to work with them on other areas that they may have not bought us. Like we have, for example, an online payment portal that you put on the website. It's pretty, it works great. There's a lot of online payment portals. Is having a slightly more user friendly and modern online payment portal going to move the needle for a customer? No. But once they're already using our system to collect AR and we're solving that really painful point, then it makes sense for them to manage more of their payments on our platform, and that's an easier conversation to have. So I'd say that, pitching, if I was, going out and raising money, it's just the more concise and kind of clear you can be on the story, on the problem, and hey, here's, our at least V1 strategy of going to market and working with it. But I'd say that I'd say get as far as you possibly can without raising money, because the story is very different of I have this idea to, hey, for us, it was we've been building this out, we've been seeing a lot of success. We need to hire more people to support this growth, right? That's a very different conversation than I have a new idea for this widget. I have no idea if it's going to work or not, but why don't you throw money at it? That's and I think about it too. I've invested in some other startups, and I try to think about it like what I make sure that I would invest in in what I'm pitching, hearing myself saying.
It sounds like Pearly's on a great path. What does success look like for Pearly in the next year or so?
Really just continuing to, I'd say kind of two things. For us, it's expanding the number of offices that we're, working with, and that's been going really well. But I'd say the second big piece for us in, 6 to 12 months, we have a lot of really exciting products coming out where, I'd say over the last year, we've been focused, a bit more on scaling the platform, on expanding, the current usage in terms of just improving things like reporting and enterprise management as we've worked with larger and larger dental groups, kind of going from our first one at 6 locations to now our largest one is 153 locations. So there's been a lot of growth there, but really, in the next 6 to 12 months, we're really excited about being able to solve more problems within the revenue cycle. So we have, basically different things that customers have asked, and we're really going to be doing a big push to be able to support really from pre-visit, during the visit to post-visit, really becoming that sort of full end-to-end patient revenue and cycle management system, and also potentially getting into insurance. So I'd say it's really expanding the pie. How I look at our roadmap typically is, your average dental practice, there's an amount of revenue they make each month. A portion of that's insurance, a portion of that's patient. Within patient, there's a lot of different areas in terms of treatment financing, in-office copays, post-visit billing, memberships. On the insurance side, there's many different aspects, and so our goal is really to how can we help automate and streamline more areas of that revenue cycle management that our customers have been asking about it. So hopefully, this time next year, we're able to, be able to help with a larger, or I'd say a wider range of that revenue cycle. And that's really for us a big, focus since we've expanded to so many locations quickly. Now it's okay. How else can we help?
Very cool. Well, it sounds like you have a clear vision and you're well on your way to achieving it. And I hope that all your patients and all your customers are happy with what we've built together and what you guys continue to share with the industry there. So that's all the questions I have for you. You have anything else you want to share with the listeners?
No, thank you so much for the time. And Paralec's been a great partner, and we've had a very long, I guess probably almost 7-8 years of working together. So look forward to continuing to build great things, and hopefully other folks who are listening to this want to go out and build and solve real problems.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jeff, and have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you.